of those clubs. Yeah, once that hysteria, that speculative hysteria is over, they might not sell for $500,000 again. How much did they go for?
750, I think.
750,000. That's their value. That's their value. I saw a thing on television. Some student at University of Kentucky, I think it was University of Kentucky, that went to the Final Two for NCAA playoffs. This student, as a member of the student body there, was able to buy playoff tickets. And he was able to buy those playoff tickets for face value. It's like $35 for 2 tickets to the playoff game. He turned around and sold those tickets for $40,000 and financed his whole college education and bought a new car with that one pair of tickets. Now, the value of those tickets was $40,000 because that's what someone was willing to pay for them. The value to the student was obviously much less than $40,000 because he sold them. But the student preferred the $40,000. The student valued the $40,000 in cash more than the tickets, and the buyer valued the tickets obviously at least as much or more than $40,000 in cash, and so they exchanged to increase value. And that brings us to our next subject, which is exchange. Exchange is, in a market economy, is mutually beneficial and free. So let's call it mutually beneficial, voluntary exchange. There's an exchange of values. If that exchange is going to be voluntary, it must be mutually beneficial. So both parties must benefit if an exchange takes place voluntarily. So exchange in a free economy or in a free market has to be win-win. Both sides have to win. Mark Twain said the definition of a deal is when both parties feel they've swindled the other party. Because both sides must gain in utility. Our previous example, the student valued the $40,000 more than the tickets, and the buyer valued the tickets at least as much or more than $40,000. So there was a mutually beneficial, welfare-enhancing exchange that took place. The Tigers and the Yankees? Yes, yes, yes. Exchange is driven by self-interest. Now, Joe Layman just talked about, none of you were there. Joe Layman spoke about civil society. And he said that in civil society we may form associations based on altruism. But I think exchange is driven primarily by self-interest. We don't exchange because we want to make somebody else better off. We exchange because we want to make ourselves better off. That's not greed. That's not self-possession or narcissism. It just says that we try to take care of ourselves and we try to take care of our families and friends, and that's just human nature. It's a survival instinct. And so we take care of ourselves with self-interest through exchange. And we exchange to make ourselves better off. We don't exchange to make somebody else better off. That's charity, usually. That's altruism, philanthropy. We usually exchange to make ourselves better off. So we want win-win exchange, something that makes us better off. Now, exchange itself can increase value. Mere exchange increases value. Remember, value is subjective. It's not objective. It's not implicit. And so if exchange moves goods from low-valued individuals or uses to high-valued individuals or uses, exchange alone increases value. So if someone has something that's of no value to them and they exchange it with someone else for something that they value more highly, and the other person values the other thing that they got more highly, value increases just from the mere act of exchange. So exchange is not parasitic. It's not non-value adding. Exchange in and of itself, over time, over place, across people, can increase value. So I think it's my opinion that the density of exchange in an economy is an important determinant of people's wealth. Like if you ever go to Eastern Europe or to a developing country, you'll see that like exchange is not deep. There's not an abundance or a depth of exchange. You know, I went to a city in Kazakhstan named, oh now it's escaping me, but it had 220,000 people. It was a pretty big city. And we wanted our driver to take us to the market. He took us to the market. It was like one little flea market. It was like, he'd probably been there since the 19th century. It was about, 100 yards wide by 400 yards long, and that's it. That was the shopping center for a city of 220,000 people. Needless to say, this place was poor. This was like dog patch. It was really poor. But I think the absence of a density of exchange explains their poverty. Because if you have a lot of exchange, a lot of value increasing exchange, people are made better off, and wealth increases, and wealth is accumulated. And without exchange, or with prohibitions to exchange, wealth is difficult to generate and to accumulate. So exchange is an important notion in our fundamental principles of economics. So Adam Smith said it's not from the altruism of the baker that we get our bread, but from his self-love. He's trying to serve himself. Now, this exchange, it's funny, brings about a kind of cooperation. You know, exchange is self-interested, but it brings about social cooperation. I mean, you have to think about what others want and how others feel in your productive activities, because you have to sell it to somebody else. So, exchange is a form of mutually beneficial, voluntary cooperation. So it's not all dog-eat-dog antagonism. It's cooperation. But you may think that's an oxymoron, self-interested cooperation, but it is. That's what happens in the marketplace. You know, if you're going to, let's say you're going to remodel your home, do you immediately run out and put a pool in your backyard? No, because when you go to sell your house, you don't get anything for that pool, even if you put it in 1 year ago. Whereas if you fix up your bathrooms or you remodel your kitchen, you usually get 100% of that back when you turn around to sell your house. So that's a form of self-interested, voluntary cooperation. You're thinking about what other people prefer and value in their homes when you make your home modernization decisions. So exchange is a complicated thing, and it's a basis of our wealth. Oh, okay, number 6. Our 6th item of our fundamental principles is private property. Joe, did you talk about private property this morning? You will later, I think. Private property is a bundle of rights bestowed upon property owners. Private property, the economic incentive of private property is that it internalizes the consequences of decisions. It has an incentive effect. You know, there's an old saying, no one takes care of someone else's property like they take care of their own property. And another one of my favorite sayings, good fences make good neighbors. It's private property. Private property allows decision makers to internalize the consequences of their decisions. If they do things that increase the value of their property, they get to keep it. If they do things that diminish or reduce the value of their property, they're punished with a reduction in the value of their private property. So it's an incentive. Private property is an incentive. What gets exchanged? We just talk about exchange on the market. What gets exchanged? Private property. You have to have a property right to the thing that you exchange on the market. What if you try to exchange someone else's property on the market? You better have their authorization to do so, or that could be construed as a criminal offense. So private property, somebody once said, private property creates a sphere of human action into which government may not intrude. Founding fathers had private property in mind because it would provide individuals a bulwark against the authoritarian and coercive power of government. It's another function of private property. A sphere of human action is what Ludwig von Mises, an Austrian economist, said about private property. But I'm not so sure that's true, because government can encroach upon your property rights and diminish your sphere of human action into which government may not intrude. Government intrudes in our property rights all the time, unfortunately. So private